Now, in this video, I'm going to explore presidential power, but one of the things about presidential power is that it's not clearly defined in the Constitution. And let me put it a different way. I know some of you are very young, so you haven't experienced very many presidents, but for those of us who are a little older, um, some presidents are really powerful, and then some presidents are not. And one of the things that political scientists do is they study, like, why is that the case? Why is it the case that some are powerful and some are not? Some of them use what I'm going to call the inherent powers of the presidency more effectively than others. And sometimes this is a good thing, sometimes it's not so much a good thing, but either way, presidential power is this thing that's kind of hard to define. So let me explain what I mean. As I said, there are inherent powers that presidents have. By that I mean they have authority, but you will not find it in the Constitution. You will not find it listed anywhere in Article 2. One of those powers is the power to give executive orders. Okay, so what is an executive order? The president can at times provide instructions to people in the executive branch. Now, we haven't talked about the executive branch specifically, so I'm going to just give you a diagram of the executive branch so you know what I'm talking about. This is actually a diagram of the government of the United States. You can see at the top it says the government of the United States, and then it breaks down in a flow chart the different branches of the government, and sort of talks about, it lists their component parts. So on the far left-hand side is the legislative branch. It lists the House and the Senate and some other offices that are part of the legislative branch. On the right-hand side, there's the judicial branch, and it lists the Supreme Court and all the courts that are below the Supreme Court. And then the center is the executive branch. And at the very top, inside the box of the executive branch, there's the president, then there's the vice president, and then there's something called the executive office of the president, right? And so these are people who work in the White House. These are people who work for the vice president. This is the Council of Economic Advisors who advises presidents on economic matters, the National Security Council that provides advice on national security, and so on. And if you look below the box of the executive branch, and for those of you who can't see this, you're just going to have to imagine it, there's another line that continues on down. And it connects, 8 different boxes as well. Those are the different departments within the executive branch. So going from left to right, there's a Department of Agriculture, a Department of Commerce, a Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department of Energy, the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. You don't need to memorize these. The Department of the Interior, the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, the Department of State, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Treasury, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. These are all the various departments that the president is in charge of. And then below that, there's a list of independent establishments and government corporations that we'll talk about later when we talk about the bureaucracy. But all of these are part of the executive branch. Everything on this list, except the things in the legislative branch and the judicial branch, this is all part of the executive branch, and the president is in charge of all of these people. And so with that, I want to go back to the lecture notes. There are times when the president wants to give instructions to some or all of these people, and he can do so, and I'm sorry I'm saying he because eventually we will have a female president, but I'm sort of in that habit, so I'll try and remember to use the plural they. They can do so just by issuing an executive order and saying, by the way, this is what we're going to be doing. And basically tell everybody in the executive branch, this is what we're going to be doing. Oftentimes executive orders will go to one specific branch, or I mean one specific department. It might go to the Department of Defense, or it might go to the Department of Transportation. Sometimes it can apply to everybody in the executive branch. Now, as I said before, executive orders are not mentioned in the Constitution. But the idea has been since the beginning of the country that executives have this kind of authority, and not just presidents, by the way, all executives, governors, mayors, are assumed to have this kind of authority to be able to tell the people who are under their immediate command what to do. And what this does is it allows the president to take action quickly. And so when a new president comes into office, right, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll issue executive orders that can get some of the things done that they want done immediately. Now, presidents can't issue executive orders over everything. It is not an unlimited power, right? There are restraints on the use of executive authority and executive orders. Executive orders can be overturned by Congress, and they can be overturned by the courts. Although sometimes Congress can overturn them not by wiping them out, but by essentially making them impossible to be carried out. So I'm going to give you two examples. The first one you can see listed, it says closing Gitmo. This is something that President Obama tried to do via executive order. And then the second one says wall on the southern border. This is something President Trump tried to do. If you want, you can click on either one of those links and you can actually see the executive order. But I'm just going to briefly describe them as examples of executive orders that Congress was able to prevent from happening. So for those of you who don't know, Gitmo is the name of the military base that the United States has in Cuba. That might surprise some of you, but yeah, we have a military base that's in Cuba. Even though we're not particularly friendly with the government of Cuba, years ago we leased the area for $1 for 99 years or something like that. And so one of the things that happened is after the attack on 9/11, one of the things that President Bush ordered the Department of Defense and the CIA and people involved in national security to do was that people who were captured on the battlefield in Afghanistan or elsewhere, instead of being brought to the United States, if they were captured, they were sent to Cuba instead. Now, the reason that President Bush did this is because he was worried that if we brought some of these people who were suspected terrorists to the United States, they would be able to get all the protections that anybody who gets brought to the United States would have. They could hire a lawyer. They would have have to have their rights read to them, all these kinds of things. And President Bush was quite frankly afraid that what might happen is some terrorists could get off on a technicality and be let loose on the streets of the United States. It also turned out there was another concern. The other concern was that one of the things that we were doing, the United States was doing, is some of these prisoners were being brought to either what are called black sites, so these were places around the country that the CIA ran, or in Gitmo, the base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and they were being, I'm going to just call it tortured. They were being tortured, right? And they were something called waterboarding, where the suspected terrorists would be strapped down onto a table with their head below their feet, a rag put over their face, and water poured on them continuously. And what it does is it apparently simulates the feeling of drowning. And it was a way of attempting to extract information from them. Well, if you did that to a prisoner in the United States, there'd be all kinds of hell to pay. You can't do that to people. You can't torture people. They called it enhanced interrogations. In any case, there were a lot of people. Some of the people who were brought to Gitmo were never even brought before a court. They were just kept there, which again goes against sort of the principles of the way the law works in the United States. And so the idea was keep them there and we won't have to worry about that. Keep them in Cuba and they won't have all the protections of the Constitution. Doesn't matter, but the way it worked out is that the courts eventually ruled no, they still get the same protections because we give people protections not because they're Americans, we give people protections because they're human beings, right? In any case, President Obama thought that the military base at Gitmo was a terrible idea. He thought it was a stain on the United States, on our system of law and order, and he trusted the courts in the United States to be able to handle terrorists. We've handled terrorists before. Actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but the World Trade Center was attacked once before on 9/11. It wasn't a successful attack, but it was an attempt to topple the building over. And so President Obama, who was a constitutional lawyer, believed that terrorists should be brought here and given all the protections, and he trusted the courts to handle it. And so when he got into office, one of the first things he did was wrote an executive order that said that the base in Guantanamo Bay should be closed within a year of him coming into office. And this video is going to go a little bit longer than the other one, so I apologize. But in any case, well, members of Congress were not thrilled with the idea of suspected terrorists being brought from Guantanamo Bay to the United States. And so when they provided funding for the military, one of the things that they wrote into the law that President Obama had to sign was it said there can't be any money spent to bring prisoners over to the United States. And since Congress controls the purse, they control the money, that put a real limit on President Obama and his ability to do things. Plus, there was a prison, a maximum facility prison that wasn't in use in Illinois. And so one of the things the Obama administration wanted to do is they wanted to sort of modify it to accommodate the suspected terrorists who were going to be brought over from Gitmo. Congress also put something into a bill saying no money can be spent to modify this prison. So what they eventually did is they tied the hands of the president by not allowing him to spend money getting prisoners from Cuba over to the United States. And so by the time, even though day one, President Obama came into office, first thing he did was sign an executive order saying the prison in Guantanamo Bay should be closed, Gitmo should be closed. By the time he left office, Gitmo was still open. It's still open as the day of this recording, April 21st, 2022. The prison is still open. The population has been reduced dramatically, but it's still open. So presidents can't do anything through executive order. The same thing, I'll do it real quickly, the wall on the southern border. One of the things that President Trump did when he came to office is he basically wrote an executive order saying that there would be a wall built along the entire border of the United States and Mexico. But Congress basically did the same thing. They just refused to provide funding for the wall. So the president could order it and say, yes, I want this done, but Congress controls the money. And so they were able to prevent that from happening. And by the way, this wasn't just a democratically controlled Congress. This is when the Republicans controlled Congress as well. They weren't going to provide the kind of funding that he wanted to build this wall across the entire southern border. Now, the courts have also overturned executive orders. I'm not going to go into any examples of that, but I just wanted to be clear that Presidents have authority that isn't listed in the Constitution. One of them is the ability to do executive orders where they provide instructions to the executive branch. It's not listed in the Constitution. It allows the presidents to act quickly and get things done that they've promised to do or that they think need to be done. But those executive orders can be overturned either by Congress, oftentimes by just simply preventing the president from being able to do anything. And they can also be overturned by the courts. The courts can say that's unconstitutional. Really quickly, one example, when President Trump came into office, one of the things that he did is he banned Muslims from coming into the country by executive order. The original ban that he signed as an executive order was declared unconstitutional by the courts. Then he did a second version of it and a third version, and ultimately the courts allowed the one final version of it to stand. So that's executive orders, but there are other kinds of informal powers that we're going to talk about in the next videos, and I'm sorry this one went a little bit long.